All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is the 6th of September, and this is a meeting with the Metropolitan Water District Representatives Caucus and a special meeting with the Board of Directors of the West Basin Municipal Water. With that, I'll go ahead and ask our staff if we could determine if we have a quorum, please.
Yep, happy to do so. We'll start with Director Don Deere.
Here.
Director Gloria Gray. Director Harold Williams.
Here.
Director Desi Alvarez. And President Scott Houston.
Yes, I'm here.
We do have a quorum.
3 out of 5 of us are present, and we will move forward. Public comment. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time, room or online?
Yeah, President Houston, we have not received any public comment ahead of the meeting. However, we do have folks online as well as here in the room. So first I'll go to anybody on the online platform. If you do have a comment, please raise your virtual hand. And not seeing any there. And then for any of those of you in the room, are there any public comment available at this time? Nope, not seeing any.
Great, thank you, Matt. And just what we usually do at this particular meeting, for those of us who are in the room, we go around and just introduce ourselves real quick. So I'll start actually with my colleagues. So go ahead, Director Williams.
Director Harold Williams, Division 1.
And I'm Scott Houston, Division 4, and President of the Board.
Director Don Deere, Division 5.
Matt Gay, Manager of Water Policy and Resources.
Desiree Quintero, Manager of Administration and Board Secretary.
Sue Sims, Group Manager for External Affairs at Metropolitan Water District.
I'm Russ Bryden, Los Angeles County Water Works District 29.
Chuck Scheich, City of Torrance Public Works.
Bruce Chalmers, Program Manager for Pure Water Southern California at Met.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Hacker. I'm the Water Resources Lead for our Pure Water team, so you'll hear a little bit more from me later.
Mary Alex, LA County Waterworks, District 29.
Tammy Myers with California Water Service.
Charles Gale, Metropolitan Water District, External Affairs.
Rodriguez, West Basin, Senior Engineer.
Joel Blair with West Basin Engineering.
And Cameron Hurley with West Basin Water Policy and Resources.
Excellent, great, thank you. And I won't go through everybody who's online. I know we have quite a few guests, but I did see Director Russ Lefebvre is here from Metropolitan and Director Joy Langford from WRD. They're elected, well, appointed. And if I missed you, we'll call you out later, but thank you for everyone who's here, both in person and virtually. So with that, we will move forward into our agenda discussion items. Item 4, if Matt, you could please bring us to that item.
Yeah, thank you, President Houston. So for the first item today, we have on the online platform, James Morgutia from Metropolitan Water District. He's the Assistant Resource Specialist 2, and he will be talking about the new modification to the turf replacement program that Metropolitan oversees relating to the new tree rebate. So James will be talking a little bit about that. As you know, we have a very robust grass replacement program here at the district, so we're very excited about this item. So James, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is James Morgutia, and I'm an Assistant Resource Specialist on the Water Efficiency team here at the Metropolitan Water District. I'd like to first start off by thanking West Basin for inviting us to speak today, and also to offer a quick kudos to Tammy, Gus, and Jennifer, who we work with really closely and do a great job in local programming, as well as promoting Metropolitan's regional efforts. And as mentioned, I'm here today to announce an exciting change to Metropolitan's Regional Turf Replacement Incentive Program. Most of you are probably aware that Metropolitan offers incentives for turf replacement to residential, commercial, and public agency water users. And so over the past couple of months, we've been hard at work researching and enhancing our turf replacement program incentives that'll hopefully entice participants to integrate more trees when they upgrade their landscapes. And so to start off, just a little history on how all this came to be. The modifications to the program came as an inquiry from one of our member agencies that was then escalated to Metropolitan's Program Advisory Committee. We had about 6 active agencies participate in this committee, and that really helped to flesh out the foundation for the proposal. Once we had established the foundation for the tree rebate, we then reached out to a few NGOs, Tree People, Heal the Bay, Theodore Payne, and the California Native Plant Society, to name a few. And that was really to gather their expertise and solidify our approach for developing some additional program resources, such as a recommended plant list and exclusion list, etc. And then overall, the feedback that we received from these organizations was pretty positive, to the point where, as staff, we felt confident with proceeding with this idea for adoption and taking it up to our board and management. Next slide, please. And so now sort of onto our why. As you can see from this graphic here, much of Southern California, which is basically the Metropolitan Water District service area, has pretty sparse tree canopy coverage, particularly in urban areas. All of the dark blue that you see on this map reflects a minimal range of coverage estimated to be somewhere between 0 and 14%. If you look into this map online, it gets a little more interesting. You can see some of the additional layers that has some supplemental information on things such as like asthma and cardiovascular disease rates. And it's very interesting to see the sort of overlap that exists with the highest rates of these conditions and minimal canopy coverage. I'm no public health expert, but if you all get a chance, take a look at it. Next slide, please. And then, just in addition to the general lack of canopy coverage in our service area, these are some more of the reasons that tie more directly into our turf replacement program as to why we're implementing these trees. Trees have additional benefits, such as urban cooling effects, which can really help with energy conservation. They're great at sequestering carbon, and they provide positive benefits to the water holding capacity and soil infiltration rates. And ultimately, our overall program and goal of reducing water use when replacing traditional grass lawns with more climate appropriate plant selections. If you're planting the right trees, they can use less water than some of the grass species that we're seeing out there. Next slide, please. And these are some of the benefits that I just mentioned here. But in addition to that, air quality improvements, increasing and protecting biodiversity is a big thing. It's a big goal. When Metropolitan revamped our program back in 2019 to incorporate some of these multi-benefit components, such as the stormwater retention feature, this is all building on some of the previous work that we've done. Next slide, please. And so, taking this all into consideration, we developed the following outline for the addition of a tree rebate to our existing turf replacement program. For residential, commercial, and industrial and institutional properties. So this will be available across the board. And so what we did was we assessed the cost and installation of a new 15-gallon tree. And from there, we settled on a rebate of about $100 per tree planted, with a maximum rebate of 5 trees per application. So the total max rebate any one customer can receive, whether they be residential, commercial, or public agency, would be $500 total. And in order to sort of validate this process, this is the first time that we'll likely be adjusting our documentation procedures to require invoices or receipts, as well as additional photos of the trees actually installed to count as proof of purchase and installation of the tree. And then after some careful consideration, we will be allowing fruit trees in the residential sector to qualify. And that's in order to help with some of the food desert concerns that face many underserved communities. And then last point here, as you may be aware, Metropolitan's turf replacement program does have a plant coverage requirement where customers must plant at least 3 plants per 100 square feet. And to ease these requirements and ensure, more adequate space planning for the integration of trees, we've sort of laxed this requirement a bit, specifically for trees, where every tree planted will count not as 1 plant, but as 3 plants in the program. And then just one thing that I should definitely cover, because this is the question that often comes up. This is not a standalone rebate for trees. This rebate is a part of the turf replacement program. I just feel like I have to reiterate it. So in order for your customers to take advantage of this additional incentive, they must be participating in the turf replacement program, and the tree that is planted must be within their project conversion area. Next slide, please. And then just to supplement this rebate, Metropolitan will be working both internally and closely with some environmental NGOs to develop a portfolio of program resources. Some of the items that we plan on developing are a definition as what counts as a tree for the purposes of a rebate. That has been vague, confusing before. We've consulted with a couple of other utilities. I believe it is the city of Albuquerque that has a similar program as this. So working with them as well as these NGOs to really hone down what is a tree, what qualifies for the rebate. We'll also be developing an exclusion list, which will likely include hedges, invasives, and non-native palms. We'll also be developing a recommended planting list and a care and maintenance and watering guide to help customers as they get these trees established. Next slide, please. And so on this slide, I have some data that we presented to our board and management. When considering alterations to our program, they wanted to see how the addition of this tree rebate would affect our bottom line base rate incentive, which is quantified on a square foot basis. For residential customers, we offer $2 per square foot. For commercial customers, $2 per square foot. Some of our member agencies out there may provide supplemental funding to this. We did not analyze any type of supplemental funding in this calculation. But in looking at, when we pay out a customer for installing a tree, how would that affect that on that $2 rate? And so when we looked at it at the residential scale, the cost per tree would add about 6 cents to our base incentive per tree when spread across the average square footage per residential project, which has gone up. It's about 1,700 square feet as of recent. And then on the commercial side, incorporating that tree rebate would add less than 1 cent per square foot to our base incentive. So sounds pretty affordable in that sense. Next slide, please. And then just looking at it with respect to the entire turf replacement estimated expenditures for this next year. At our current activity and dropout rates that we're experiencing, we're looking at about $830,000, which reflects about 3% of the total projected expenditures for our turf replacement program for this next year. So we're looking at somewhere over 27, 28 million for this next year. Next slide, please. And so just on to next steps. This additional incentive that I am presenting to you today has already been approved by Metropolitan's board and will be available in the next few months. We're still working on finalizing a few administrative processes, a couple of details that we have to work out with our SoCal Water Smart platform. So likely a launch date for this incentive will be the beginning of 2024. And that's all I have for today. And so I am free for any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much. Actually, just really thorough. And with that, by the way, I think Director Gray joined us on the phone. So Director Gray, are you present? Yes.
I am here. Thank you very much. No questions, though. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Director Gray is here, and then EJ Caldwell, our general manager, just arrived as well, so he is now in that seat. So with that, I want to open up to any questions or comments for James, whether it's in here or on the virtual platform. Raise your hand. So anyone, any thoughts, questions, comments? I'll speak at once. Matt, go ahead.
Questions. Thank you, James. I'm just curious if going forward for this program, will the tree aspect of it be included kind of with the turf replacement budget? Or is it contingent on any type of grant funding going forward? Is it kind of expected that this will be part of the program permanently?
So right,
Okay, you got it.
can you all hear me? Okay, cool. So we're really just kind of testing the waters here with this program. We do have a couple of grants that we recently received. This tree rebate element was not included in those grant proposals, but it's within the budget for us to continue this program if it is effective. We will have to go back to the board and just keep them up to date on what we decide to do based on the success of it. But yeah, for now, this is sort of like a pilot testing the waters type of thing.
Chuck.
Yeah, I got a question. Actually, it's not about the tree replacement so much as about the turf replacement program itself. I know that Met was successful in getting a number of grants recently. There was some consideration of increasing the rebate from $2 per square foot to $3 per square foot. In effect, are going to be in effect?
So the way that those grants are written, they are to provide an additional $1 per square foot to our base incentive. So they would increase our incentives from $2 to $3 per square foot. Those grants, we are currently in the process of finalizing agreements. We received 2 grants recently from DWR and USVR. And so working on hashing out those details. We're hoping to launch those grants and this tree rebate program all at the same time. So the tail end of this year, the beginning of 2024, it's looking a little cleaner for the books. So that might be the start date.
Great news, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? EJ Caldwell.
Thank you, President Houston. The only, I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to let everybody know, James, great job on the presentation. James is a former intern of West Basin Municipal Water District. And so I just wanted to promote that because we have a great internship program here at West Basin, and obviously it leads to great things.
Thank you, EJ. Yep, I owe it all to West Basin, EJ. They did me well.
Okay, I don't see anyone else, and I will just kind of close it out too. I mean, number one, it is a great program. It seems like you all vetted this with every option here and you presented it properly. And of course, people have the option if they want to utilize 1 or 2 or 5 trees or not on their space, correct, James?
Yeah, that's correct. So when this was initially in its infancy, we thought about making it an actual requirement to the program. But we didn't want to make the program any more difficult. So yeah, this is, this is an option to customers. They don't have to, they have the option of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They can go beyond 5, but we'll only pay for up to 5. So.
Very good. Well, I think it's really exciting. I'm glad that Metropolitan has approved this and you all are working to implement it. And I'm sure all of our member agencies will look forward to that being a part of the package, if you will. So
I'd like to see the list.
Director Gear, go ahead.
I'd like to see the list of trees.
You would like to see a list of trees at some point.
All right, we're working on that. And when we have our recommended lists and our exclusion list, we'll be sure to send that on over.
Very good. All right. Well, I think that concludes this item. So thanks again, James, and congratulations on your good work over at Metropolitan. And so with that, I'll move into the next item, which is 4B as in boy. If our General Manager Caldwell will go ahead and introduce that item.
Yes, happy to do so. The next item is our update on water conservation outreach, advertising, and messaging. And for this presentation, we have Sue Sims, the Group Manager of External Affairs.
Hi there, how are you? Before I start, let me echo my kudos to West Basin. We love working with your staff. You're some of our very favorite people, and especially in terms of conservation and outreach. I know Charles spends a lot of time here and working with you. I understand that, I hope I have this right, that one of our former employees' daughter just started with West Basin, Erin McLaughlin, I think, just started in your public affairs office. So we take, but we give back. So. Although I think we probably mostly take. But, share my screen. Got the voice there, okay. Okay. Is that showing? No? Okay. There we go. Yeah, good. Our board had asked for an update on our water conservation advertising campaign, and so I'm going to share that with you with a few updates today. Let me first talk a little bit about the goal and how we measure that success. And the goal, I think, will come as no surprise to any of you, is to continue to drive down the demand for water and to promote rebate programs, both ours and the member agency rebate program. So the way that we are measuring that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of messaging and in terms of allocating our resources. A lot of it is measured by the number of rebates that we are, rebate applications that we're getting, the visits to Be Water Wise, and then our engagement both at events and and on social media where we can measure. One of the things that became clear in talking to our board over the last couple of months was because we have so many new board members, some of them were not familiar with some of the work that we have done over the past couple of years. They were saying we should, do some innovative things. And as we started talking about some of the innovative things that we have done, we thought it might be helpful to put together a highlights reel that showcases some of them. And a couple of the things that we talked about with them is we were the first water agency to use Pandora for our ads and put together a water-themed playlist with shower songs of 5 minutes or less. We've done that a couple of years ago. We reached millions with coverage of special events, including one that's very close to here, that iconic Donut in the Sky at Randy's, as well as the Ferris wheel at Santa Monica Pier, both of which we turned into giant billboards for our campaigns. And then we've started scripting and designing our own commercials in-house. One, because we have a really talented team, and two, because it saves us a ton of money. We've also used something called geofencing, which is when you opt in, if you walk into a store that has rebates, you will get an ad that will talk to you about what rebates are eligible. So if you're, if you opt in, you walk into a Home Depot, it'll show you the sprinklers or the toilets or the appliances. And then we've also even done some mobile gaming, so water conservation, mobile gaming. And so I'm going to run a 4-minute video and get to that and do a recap of that. Whoops. Okay, did I not move it right?
It occurs to me that all these very commendable environmental programs that Met's involved in, it should get more publicity in the papers, in the LA area papers. They need to, people need to know what Met is doing. They're doing a great job.
Let's all take a turn. Every drop of water we save helps. For water saving tips, turn to bewaterwise.com. Brought to you by
Can you tell us what you're thinking about when you go to make a save?
It's all about patience. I just wait to fully load the dishwasher before I run it. Now that's one of my better moves to save water.
Every day is a chance to save water and money with new rebates outside and inside too.
Put water savings in the mix. Play SoCal's anthem. It's the one that reminds us that conservation and climate change are here to stay. Let's take bold steps now and visit bewaterwise.com for water saving tips and rebates.
Want to save more water during the drought? Install a smart sprinkler controller. Save a ton. Rip out your lawn and put in a native landscape. Hello, gorgeous. And we are going to help you pay for it because we've got rebates. This is how we save water. For tips and rebates, go to bewaterwise.com.
¿Quieres ahorrar más agua durante esta sequía? Instala un controlador inteligente y ahorra un montón.
So what are the measures of some of our success? We put a few of them here. Our just completed campaign had more than 400 million impressions and it drove a 158% increase in turf rebate spending over the past 2 years. We had more than 30 million impressions on social media and 220,000 clicks to BeWaterWise.com that came directly from our social media posts. And then our influencer campaign, which again promoted BeWaterWise.com, generated a fairly significant 40% increase in social media engagement on all of our platforms. I mentioned influencers, and you saw a couple of them on the screen. Using celebrities for product endorsements can be very expensive. I know our chairman I believe his son works for L'Oreal and has talked to me about how much they pay some of their influencers on social media. But we've been really lucky because the groups and the people that we've connected with are passionate about conservation, about sustainability. And so we've gotten them at really bottom prices, and some of their ads have been some of the most significant ones in terms of reaching new, especially younger audiences. And so that's been a really successful campaign that we're going to be building on. One of the ones with the Angel City soccer team that we just finished, she rents. And one of the things that our board has told us is a lot of this is focused on homeowners, but what can renters do? And so we're excited to debut that one shortly. Again, using all of these media, television, we're back actually on broadcast television. I'll talk about that in just a second, which we're testing out both in a local English station, KTLA, and Spanish, and then, you know, some of the other ads that we've that have performed well for us in the past, radio and billboards. So we did a focus group this past spring, and we wanted to find out what people are looking for in terms of their messaging. And one of the things that stood out was that Californians, I mean, everybody feels like they have done a very good job. And I think you see that in most of the numbers. And they want to be thanked. They want to be acknowledged for the work that they have done. They also want to know what government agencies and what businesses are doing, and that this all isn't falling just on them. They want tips, which we do. I know you do too, in your outreach and in your social media. And then to talk about how that commitment plays out in the long run in terms of storing water, whether that's groundwater. I'm sure the message that our general manager has been out there saying, and I know many others, about every drop of water we save now is a drop we have for tomorrow. And so that's been a real focus, but especially this sort of, I'm doing my part, but what are others doing? And so we wanted these themes to shine in our campaigns. So now, if I can, I'm going to show our new TV commercial. This was done entirely in-house, and I want to sort of underscore what that means. Because we did all the design, because we did the animation, because we did the scripting, it cost us less than $10,000 to do this ad. And our video guys, who have come mostly from the private sector, tell me that this would have cost between $400,000 and $500,000 if we'd gone to a production company. So huge savings by having our staff do this commercial. And let me see. I think I might have it this time.
California's weather is getting more extreme. Like nature, our reservoirs draw down. They refill when rains return and snow melts. But unpredictable does not mean powerless. Be water-wise. Conserve water, indoors and out, rain or shine. Today for the future. Visit BeWaterWise.com for water-saving tips and money-saving rebates.
So, I mean, some of the things that were really important to us, I mean, you see even in the kitchen, the Be Water Wise branding, connecting our weather extremes to the need to save water, whether it's wet or whether it's raining. So kind of this rain or shine message. And then, you know, that we're all empowered to make these little changes that have big benefits. talk a little bit about this year's budget. We're spending most of it in the summer and fall, which is typically what we do. And then we'll have some money left over if we need it in the spring to reinforce those messages. And that'll be, whether we spend that money will be driven a lot by conditions and certainly by direction from our board. We do have our campaign right now is in 7 languages, but we've had it in 5 for many years. The Armenian and Tagalog are a little bit newer in terms of our messaging. And then you'll see the pie chart on the right that at least 42% of it is in communities identified as disadvantaged communities. And then in addition to that, a significant investment to Spanish and Chinese television and streaming on YouTube. This is just a breakdown of how that money.
Yes, Director Gray, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead. Director Gray.
Go ahead. A little bit of breakdown. I won't go through the whole things, but we're averaging 156 TV spots every day here locally on broadcast and cable, as well as including CNN, HGTV, and Dodgers and Angels games. And then we are doing some advertising in community newspapers in Spanish and Asian languages, and making all of those materials available to your member agency and the others, including co-branding. One area that's been really important to us is getting what's called added value. So additional spots, whether they leave billboards up longer or additional television commercials. And this fall campaign, we have about a 26% in additional value. So that's about $600,000 in added advertising at no cost to Metropolitan. So we're very proud of that. And then this is the final year of a 3-year campaign that the board authorized back in 2021. So we will be working on a request for proposal for a new media buy company. Again, we're going to maximize that because we'll do all the creative work in-house, and then bring back staff's recommendation in early 2024 to the board, and move forward based on direction that we've received from them, and of course, what's decided in Met's budget going forward. So that is a summary of our current campaign. Be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. And I'll open up the floor, if there's any questions.
I take back what I said. I'm impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a tough media market to break through. And if you don't have, Britney Spears or somebody doing something crazy, it's a little hard to, or Beyonce or whoever, hard to get the attention. But I'm really proud of our team. They've worked really hard. And a lot of the input that we get is from your member agencies too. And we very much appreciate it. I mean, they're hearing what people are saying directly out in the community, and that's incredibly valuable to us. So thank you to your staff as well.
Thank you. Chuck.
Yeah, I've got one question.
Yeah.
The videos, are they available to us, basically member agencies?
They are. They are. We've got them posted on Be Water Wise, but we're happy to send you the files. And if they're interested in co-branding with your name or your logo, we can certainly do that. That's very easy since we're doing it all in-house.
Thanks.
So, yeah, just let us know.
Thank you, President Houston. Sue, at the tail end of the longer video, I thought I saw a clip really quickly that talked about co-branding with other agents or co-branding opportunities. Is that what you were referring to, is kind of incorporating the videos and existing materials to include other logos?
Yes, exactly.
Like okay.
Exactly. Whether those are the static assets like billboards or whether that's the television commercials. The one that's a little more challenging because they're usually very, very short are the radio ones. Mm-hmm. And so those we typically, but for all of our other assets, we're happy to, not only just put a logo on, but if there are, adjustments that need to be made that speak to your communities or other languages that are becoming important in terms of audiences, we're happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Very good. No, thank you. I don't see anybody else with questions on the platform or here, but Sue, just a couple things. I mean, one is, well, first of all, I was just thinking about this when you started. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, and I've said this, public agencies have to be very nimble, right? Just as much as the private sector. And we're trying to change our messaging. We're trying to still get the attention of people, especially as you know, the weather conditions change and their focus is on other priorities and so on and so forth. So I want to commend you and the team. And how many people are on the team?
It's about 8. We're working on this campaign, not full time, all of them, but between the videographers and the designers and then the people that are actually working with the media buyer, but eight different people that are more or less working on that. So
very good. Because I think the work you've all been putting out is really high caliber, if you will, as I've watched it evolve over time. And what Chuck said, I think, is I was going to kind of ask that question too. I mean, obviously some agencies have more resources than others, so it's great that you all can help, especially maybe the smaller ones where it's the member agencies, it's just a city, and may not even have a staffer who practically is a PIO person.
Yeah. Yeah, there's several of those, and you're right. It's we've done a lot of work, for example, with like the city of Compton and some of the other smaller entities, but yeah. And the other partnership that we have that's really evolved in the last year or so is with the state Save Our Water campaign. You may have seen their ads.
Bring that up.
We're actually going to have a booth. Last year we did, and this year again. For example, at Taste of Soul, we've got a booth right next to there. So people come and they almost have this pavilion where they're learning, they're getting plants, they're learning about plants. There's activities for the kids. So that synergy's also been helpful. I used to work for the state, so I know that the money kind of ebbs and flows in terms of advertising, but as a result of the last drought, they got a couple of years of funding. And so they've got some great content and great billboard space. So.
No, I was just going to say, because I just saw those commercials on TV the last handful of days, and everything's fresh and clean and all that. And so I would assume you all will be working with them. I would tell EJ, of course, or however, we parlay that with our own internal team.
Yeah.
The Met messaging, the Save Our Water messaging. I think AWWA's got something going on too, I think. But
we also worked with Caltrans a couple of times last year on the signs on the freeways and got the severe drought. And it seems so simple, but that was quite the task to try and get that done. But think about how many people probably saw that and just one more messenger. So yeah, I think the more we can leverage what other people are doing, then the more that message gets out.
That's right. Well, I just want to say thank you and to your team and everything's gone up net, and of course how you support us and you're listening to what's happening from our communities. I mean, I know that we have a pretty diverse service area. We have some of those languages that I'm sure that we can capitalize on too.
Yeah.
Outreach in our communities.
We'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
And last but not least, and you mentioned when you started, there's a lot of new folks now who are in water leadership, whether the Met board and other areas, and they may not realize the work that has happened over the last 5, 6, 7, and 8 years or more. So you all have been very innovative, but we all know that we have to always reinvent again.
Right. Well, I mean, that speaks to both the education and this whole career pipeline, jobs pipeline. And I know we're all trying to figure out how to, what's the old saying, we've done such a good job delivering water that people don't even think about it. You don't realize there's an industry and how important it is. So, many of the member agencies, including West Basin, are training some of that talent, as we heard earlier. So that's something that's foremost in our mind as well. So.
Good. All right, well, excellent. Thanks for being here and updating us and our caucus. So with that, we will move on to the next item, which is 4C as in cat. EJ Caldwell, if you please introduce that item.
Yes, thank you very much, President Houston. As you recall, we have mentioned that the Pure Water Southern California project, which is right here in our backyard, that we'd like to see this brought back with some regularity for this MWD caucus meeting. So I'm excited to introduce this item. Again, it's the Pure Water Southern California Program Environmental Planning Process Update. And for this presentation, we have Bruce Chalmers, the Program Manager, and Matt Hacker, the Senior Resource Specialist for Metropolitan Water District.
Thank you, EJ, directors, and everyone. We're going to give you an update today on our program. I'm going to do the first part. Matt Hacker's going to do the second part. And, we hope it gives you some information. Next slide. Just a short outline of what we're going to talk about. We'll talk a little bit about funding, what our team's been doing, the demo plan, outreach, planning, and then just a little bit of preview for our September subcommittee meeting. I think everybody probably knows that pure water and drought programs, if you will, have been moved from engineering, operation, and technology committee to our own separate subcommittee, which meets on the fourth Tuesday of the month. And that next meeting will be September 26th at 9:30. Next slide. You all probably have heard the good news. We received a check for $80 million. This is what an $80 million check looks like. The state does not wire transfer fund. They give you a hard copy check. We didn't get to hold it, but I think some did. And on July 19th, there was a celebration at the demo plant. We'll have some pictures. It was well attended. And that is what's funding some of our continuing work. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is. We've also applied for a USBR Water Smart Grant. We applied in February. We're still waiting to hear. They have not notified folks yet. That's to do a feasibility study that will be required for the large-scale infrastructure grant that the federal government was part of the infrastructure bill. And the first money for that, it was supposed to come out at the end of August. It'll probably come out in September. Next slide. Some of our current planning activities, won't read all of them, but we're preparing a detailed sequencing and implementation schedule. That is part of some of the first work our program manager is doing, which was authorized in January. And from that schedule, we'll have a pretty good idea of what each of our projects are going to be, when they're going to be needed, what the critical path is, what the milestones are, and then we'll be able to put costs to that schedule and come up with a cost curve. We continue pilot testing. We continue working with LA County Sanitation District on their studies. We have bi-weekly calls with Southern California Edison. It turns out the power to the site was one of the critical needs. We've kind of moved away a little bit from the 2028 early start projects because of that. We'll talk about how that impacts the schedule, not to give it away, but it doesn't impact you all at all. But it does delay the early start, if you will, from 2028 to somewhere around 2032. So the idea is still to get water out as early as we can, but SCE and some other reasons, just the 2028 date was difficult. We have also had a lot of coordination with LADWP and Operation Next. We're going to have some discussion of that, as well as we'll have some detailed discussion of our CEQA work. Next slide. Our conveyance team got authorization in March to start the preliminary design of reaches 1 and 2. That takes the conveyance pipeline from the AWT in Carson through the cities of Long Beach and Lakewood. The city council in Carson has approved the alignment. Long Beach will approve, goes to the city council this month. And we've incorporated all the comments from Lakewood. So those two reaches, the pipeline alignment is pretty well settled. So there's not too many questions left. And West Basin, WRD, Long Beach all have connections to those first two reaches. We're continuing permitting. You can see them. They're flood control, Army Corps, Caltrans, et cetera. We're starting some of the 408, 404 permits for some of the crossings in those first two reaches. Next slide. The demo plant, the end-only tertiary MBR report is finally finished. The secondary MBR demo testing is also finished, so we'll start working on that report, and we're planning for the next phase of testing, which looks like it'll be NDN testing. That'll start toward the end of the year. We had the draft DPR regulations are out for comment. So we're reviewing those comments. We have regular discussions with LACSD and a number of the other agencies and water industries. Next slide. Here's some pictures. You can see there's everybody holding an oversized $80 million check. And thank you all for attending that and participating. Next slide. Concentrating then a little bit on the environmental planning. The notice of preparation scoping meetings were done and completed in October. We're writing draft sections for the EIR. Some of the outstanding topics that are still being worked on are air quality, GHGs, and the health risk assessment. And we're looking at mitigation measures. What's the difference between a mitigation measure and a community benefit? Having lots of those kind of conversations. Next slide. This slide summarizes the project objectives. So your CEQA alternatives app will be graded, if you will, or evaluated against these topics. There are full sentences for these, but these just are summarized. So these are the things we want our program to do to meet regional water supply demands, new, reliable, cost-effective diversification, reduce our reliance on imported water, maximize the beneficial reuse of wastewater, and improve coordination and future integration with other water supplies and distribution systems. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Next slide. This slide gives you a flow chart, if you will, of how we develop alternatives for the EIR. The EIR must present alternatives necessary to permit a reasoned choice. So we don't have to look at every single possible option. That would be way too many. But the options have to be reasonable, and they must feasibly attain most of the principles and objectives that we just had on the previous slide. So we look at different components, if you will, to put all our alternatives together. You see them listed there. It's what treatment process, who gets the flow, different pipeline sizes, alignments, application methods, are they injection wells, are they ponds, those kind of things. So we put all those together. We come up with I don't remember the exact number. I think it's somewhere between 5 and 7 alternatives out of all those components. Next slide. Changing topics. We've had a lot of coordination in the last 3 to 5 months with LADWP and Operation Next. And that coordination fits in with that last objective to try to coordinate with other reuse and provide sustainability and flexibility. So we're looking at how our 2 large and very similar programs can provide some type of regional integration. So Pure Water is 150 MGD. It looks like Operation Next is going to be somewhere between 140 and 180. And so we've kind of settled on 150. So we're looking, you add the 250s together. So that's, a requirement of somewhere around 300 MGD. And that's an approximate number. What it does, however, is from the connection, and we'll show where on the next slide, but that would require that our backbone pipeline diameter be increased from about 7 feet to about 9 feet for about 14 miles north of the Whittier Narrows. It will require us to redo some of our technical studies. Some of the studies have seasonal components, and there'll be different and possibly more impacts from a larger diameter. It'll require that some parts of the alignment be tunneled where they were open cut previously, et cetera. But we are going to we'll give you an idea about the staging of that implementation. So you can see that again, for your area, there's little to no impact. Next slide. This gives just a schematic showing our AWT and blue backbone pipeline. The purple is a schematic from the Operation Next facilities that go from Hyperion to a connection point somewhere in the Whittier Narrows area. Hasn't been exact. But then you see that the pipeline north of Whittier Narrows, it's about 14 miles. That pipeline could need to be increased to 9-foot diameter. So there's no agreement with LADWP to do this work. It'll be discussed at the September subcommittee meeting, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion after that. But because for CEQA, we want to, I don't want to call it a worst case, but we want to make sure that all the impacts are there. Metropolitan and LA came up with an agreement that we could look at an oversized pipe for this and worry about if we're actually going to take the water at a future date. And if there's no agreement at a future date, we can always go back to the 7-foot because that's, the impacts would already be covered for the smaller pipeline. Next slide. Talking about staging, I think you probably know phase 1's 115 MGD, phase 2 increases that to a total of 150. And we've kind of, just for talking purposes, split phase 1 up into 4 different stages and different reaches. So reach 1 and 2, you can see is Carson and Long Beach. There's no impacts from LADWP on that. As I mentioned, we're already starting preliminary design. Reaches 3, 4, and 5 go from Long Beach to the Rio Hondo spreading grounds. That's mostly along the San Gabriel River in SCE right-of-way. There are no impacts to that either in diameter or schedule. The 2 reaches that are impacted the most are reaches 6 and 7. Those were the 2 reaches that are north of Whittier Narrows. That's from Rio Hondo to the northernmost point at the Santa Fe and Canyon spreading grounds. And there is nothing in our CEQA for any east-west conveyance at this point. That will also be discussed at the September subcommittee meeting. And it will impact the Azusa pipeline, not in construction, but there is approximately a 2-year delay to that reach north of Whittier Narrows, which would delay DPR. Next slide. Here's the schedule. You can see the original schedule is up on top without Operation Next. The 2 important points are the milestone for the EIR was going to be 3rd quarter in 2024. You can see in the bottom that gets extended to the 3rd quarter of 2025. So approximately a year delay to incorporate the larger diameter. And then the other thing to note is the original construction schedule completed in 2032, but adding that Operation Next upsize will require about doubling the amount of tunnel to about 30%, and that will increase the schedule 2 years. You can see that red diamond in the middle, that's initial online that takes the place of the early delivery, if you will, somewhere in the 2030 timeframe. So no change to that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Bruce. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek, a sneak preview of what we're going to be talking about at our, or do you want to push the next slide for me? Perfect. Awesome. What we're going to be talking at the Pure Water Subcommittee later this month. So the 3 topics that'll be covered under the Pure Water component of that are to provide a quarterly update. The other part of it will be to have a specific section on the new DPR regulations, which Bruce just mentioned, that those just came out. So we'll have a little workshop on what we think about those are. And then we'll be doing, and I'll be talking a little bit more about this section, since it does impact West Basin and the surrounding areas here, about the assessment of aquifer storage and recovery to metropolitan feeders. So this came up a couple of questions a couple of months ago back at our board meeting. A couple of the directors actually asked, would it be possible to do some sort of integration into a metropolitan feeder? So we'll actually be talking about that on September 26th. So do you want to push the next slide? And I'll just talk a little bit about what we kind of found out there. So we would take about 60 MGD of the pure water deliveries up to that. That would be the water deliveries going to DPR, could potentially go into groundwater storage here in either the West Coast Basin or in the Central Basin, or both. And then that stored water would be extracted and either left in the ground for a period of time, if there's a need for the local parties to have it, or it could be conveyed to Metropolitan's treated water feeders. In this area, there are 2 of Metropolitan's major feeders, the lower feeder and the second lower feeder. We also looked at the middle feeder. So that'll give you an idea of which ones we're going to be looking at. So you want to push to the next slide real quick? Perfect. Oh, there's a picture of those 3. Sorry, this was a last minute addition. So we have 3 of those feeders. The middle feeder is in main San Gabriel Basin, the lower feeder is in Central Basin, and the second lower is the connection to that would be here in West Coast Basin. So those are the 3 different feeder tie-ins that we've looked at. So next slide, please. Perfect. So we'll be discussing the considerations that we looked at as part of this analysis that would be a different alternative that we may look at. What are the demands in the current feeders, existing recharge capacity to take that additional water? What sort of additional facilities would we need? Water quality issues. This one's a big one, primarily because when you integrate within Metropolitan system, you have to meet the ambient water quality. So a lot of the groundwater here doesn't necessarily match Metropolitan's water quality within our feeders, particularly things like nitrogen, boron, other sorts of things that are within the groundwater basins. Doesn't quite match our facility, so that'll need to be treated. And then we'll also be looking at how that might affect groundwater in movement of groundwater throughout the system. So next slide, please. Perfect. So this gives you a constraints analysis primarily for the demand assessment. There is limited downstream demand within the metropolitan feeders at each of these locations. Somewhere between 30 and 80 million gallons a day is what we're looking at. There's also within Central Basin and West Coast Basin, there may be a limited need for that additional recharge at all times. For pure water, we're looking at a pretty consistent flow. So that may need to be put into the ground and left for a dry year. There's limited additional recharge capacity at each of the recharge areas. Injection wells are likely going to be required in order to add any additional water such as this. And so you could also be looking at any new recharge would impact travel time estimates that WRD has already estimated for us. And there may be some water rights issues as to how those would happen within each of these basins since they are adjudicated. And last, again, I already talked about the water quality. There are several constituents within the groundwater basin that exceed the ambient water quality of our feeders. And so the water quality would need to match before those could go in to our feeders. So next slide. Perfect. So just some conclusion about this part of it. So the spreading grounds are not available about 50 days a year. So we'd have to find somewhere to put the water if we were going to do that. DPR, ultimately, that's why we looked at that, because that could be an option. It could potentially require up to 40 new extraction wells and maybe 60 additional, if it's a 60 MGD project, 60 new injection wells. There may be lack of demand downstream, especially in the second lower feeder. It could be as low as 10 MGD. So it's definitely something for us to consider. And these are the list of the constituents for sure: nitrogen, boron, perchlorate, PFAS, chromium-6, and VOC would all be exceeded within our feeders. So, and if we were to do something like this for 60 MGD, primarily because of the treatment costs, it could exceed $1.8 billion, which would be almost $1 billion more than doing DPR. So I'm going to leave it there. I think we may have one more.
The next one, actually, Director Lefebvre has his hand up. So
oh, he does. Perfect.
I'll go ahead. Director
I think we have a next slides. No, that's it. Perfect.
One more slide.
Oh, there you go.
But Director Lefebvre, go ahead. You hear us?
This is you.
Oh, you don't want to do this one, huh? Okay.
No, yeah, no, you can do it. Or Director Lefebvre has his hand up. So if you'd like to ask a question at this
Why
point.
don't you guys finish out this slide and we can.
Yeah, one last slide for you, Bruce.
So next steps for the Pure Water team, we're working on the preliminary design. For SCE, they need what's called a method of service, or a MOS application. That's what gets serious for them when you tell them how much power you want, when you need it by, and they'll look at their system and tell you where you're going to get it and how much it's going to cost. The schedule, we talked about, we got a draft schedule a week ago, so we're reviewing that. We're working on the draft PIR. The draft PIR current schedule is December of 24 for a draft EIR. We're looking at the nitrogen management, and we're also going to discuss the treated water augmentation at the subcommittee meeting as well.
Yes, so it'll be fun and exciting.
A lot going on.
A lot going on, for sure.
Very, very thorough. Director Lefebvre, can you?
Thank you. Some weeks ago, the state passed a law having to do with an improved version of the CEQA process. Does that have any impact on how we're going forward?
I'm going to say no. I have not heard our CEQA people, staff say that anything's changing. Was this in drought, part of the drought?
No, it's supposed to help bring a speedier process to bring systems online. It has a substantial impact to the sites program, for example, and I would think that it would have affected our project too. But maybe the state hasn't put all of the had put all the new process in place. but it could be well, it could be substantial for some processes. I kind of just wondering how we were doing. And I must say, I had trouble figuring out how the main process that Bruce had fitting with the what was going on in the second part of the presentation, but I'll wait until the 26th to try to figure it out. By the way, this really sounds terrific. I'm a huge supporter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Lefebvre. EJ, do you know anything that you may have been referring to?
We can provide the director some additional information. We believe that the CEQA legislation that he was referring to is part of a trailer bill that passed subsequent to the budget. You'll recall that under the emergency declaration, the governor did take some actions in relation to CEQA as far as water in the Central Valley. So we'll have to do additional research on that, but we can get that to the director. I don't believe that it'll impact.
You know, we've discussed we're not really going to take any shortcuts because it's such a big program.
Yeah, we really can't.
Right.
The hand in the back.
I see. Yes. And you guys are on a longer timetable, I would say too. So, but there's a lot of moving parts that were just happened, and probably more CEQA reforms coming down the pipe that may into this. Thank you for that question, Director Lefebvre. I see Alex in the back.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Bruce and Matt. And I may be with Director Lefebvre in connecting the first part of the presentation to the second part. You know, maybe I'll ask a question that may help clarify, or maybe not. But essentially, Bruce, for your portion of the presentation, is what you're looking for from the subcommittee later this month. Are you looking for essentially the direction from the Met board to integrate Operation Next into Pure Water? Are you looking for concurrence for that? Are you looking for direction from the subcommittee on where that goes?
There is no action at the subcommittee. It's just informational.
Okay, because I guess this is just from the staff perspective. It seems like I'm glad to hear LA and Metropolitan are coordinating two of the largest supply projects we've seen in the region in a long time. But it seems like that's a big policy change that's wasn't necessarily contemplated when the board originally discussed the Pure Water program. And so from the policy point, I guess I'm wondering, what's the touch point for the board to integrate those two projects, and how does that come together?
Good question. The agreement, if you will, is a handshake agreement to upsize the pipe for CEQA, but that's all it is. To actually take water would require an MOU or an agreement, which would be put together and taken to the board for authorization. So there's no commitment other than that. There's no commitment on an east-west pipeline at this point. That'll be discussed with the board in January, I think. So this is just because CEQA is out in front of some of the other decisions. Operation Next was going over the hills, the Hollywood Hills, you know, until, I don't know, 5-6 months ago.
And I guess my concern is that this is now, or the integration of the two projects is now pushing the timeline for Pure Water from what was originally envisioned. And so I would suggest, or have, you know, for maybe some input from that staff to think about that touch point with the board for that policy discussion, for them to say, is this where we want to go? Or is, you know, just to get their buy-off that integration of those two projects and the timeline and everything is really where the two projects should go. And I don't, from the staff perspective, I don't really have a thought one way or another. I just think the board, since that's a change of policy, should be able to weigh in on that.
I think we agree.
Yes, I think you see our nodding heads. I think you know we agree. Yep.
Very good, thank you. Rob Besti.
Yeah, I have a question for Matt. So is it an alternative analysis in the CEQA for injection and then local treatment built by Met? Or
it is not decided who's going to do that, but in order to get a integrated within Met system, it will need to be a certain water quality.
Certainly.
Right, of course, or it would be left in the ground.
Yeah, and then put in for conveyance within the Met.
Right. Right. So this is one of the alternatives that several of the board members have asked for, is for us to take a look at what if we kept it all here in the lower area and took it and integrated it within Met system, and this is what it would look like. Yeah. So definitely a fun idea to think about. Again, it's quite a bit more expensive than doing some of the other options.
And that the feeder then would be built also, or is it part of but theoretically could downsize the feeder to some extent?
Right. In theory, you could take it, you could downsize some of the pipelines north of that. Yep.
When you talked about, I think it was slide 10, that number, but when we talk about the alternatives, is flange to flange an alternative that's being considered?
Well, let's just say this. Heather Collins is going to speak to what we're looking at for flange to flange at the September workshop. One of the biggest concerns there is getting the right blend within the feeders. Example here would be the second lower feeder, which serves a lot of West Basin, a portion of West Basin anyway. And so you'd have to make sure you'd have enough blend water within that in order to meet the requirements and have enough time. So at this point, it's something we're looking into, but not necessarily committing to. Want to add anything to that, Bruce?
No, I think you said it well. Right now, it's raw water augmentation, DPR.
Right. But just to make sure that we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's, we're looking at all the different potential options that have been brought to us and thinking about what would that look like as an alternative to doing raw water augmentation or going all the way up to Weymouth or Deemer or all the different options. So definitely kind of considering what those might look like.
But to clarify, it's not one of the 5 to 7 alternatives that you mentioned.
No.
And can I ask this, if you look at that slide 10, it talks about the alternative development, and I think you were the one who said 5 to 7 alternatives. The next slide talks about the coordination with the city of Los Angeles. So is that one of the alternatives?
Operation Next is not included in the EIR. So there's no discussion of Operation Next. The upsized pipe will just say we're going to look at upsizing the pipe for possible future flexibility. And we'll mention a potential connection, but there's no mention really of Operation Next or any of their facilities.
And then in the presentation, will the 5 to 7 alternatives be identified there?
Will they what?
The 5 to 7 alternatives be identified in the presentation that's going to be provided to the board, or is that available?
I don't think they've been final. Well, they haven't been finalized yet. I think there has been some discussion on discussing those publicly before the draft EIR comes out, but there hasn't been any schedule or any decisions made for that. But I mean, you can think of a couple of them. It's 150 MGD, or it's 90 MGD and only not doing DPR. You know, there shouldn't really be any huge surprises.
But will that be brought to the board in deciding what those alternatives are?
That's a good question. I don't know that I know the answer to that.
The board has been proactive in discussions with everything with pure water. And I would not expect anything different.
I see Director Lefebvre, you have your hand up again. You want to unmute yourself. May or not be able to get to us. Rob Bestie, go ahead.
Oh, my question. Or Bruce. So when you're
Okay, here I am.
Well, we got ya.
You've mentioned the east-west pipeline a couple times. How, you know, there's quite a bit of difference between where you are with pure water and where we are with east-west pipeline. How are you connected to, how are those two programs connected?
The east-west pipeline is being evaluated by a different group than Pure Water. It was evaluated essentially by the same group that's looking at the drought projects. So they're going to give a presentation at the subcommittee meeting that will look at different ways to get water from the east side of Met over to the state water project only areas on the west side. Some of the options look at using existing pipes. One option is a new east-west pipeline that could be recycled water, it could be potable water, it could be a blend. In essence, if Operation Next ties in at Whittier Narrows, there has to be some way to move that water out into the San Fernando Valley. That's outside of the purview of our pure water program and is being considered separately.
So we'll hear about it on the 26th, a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it'll be part of the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll get to hear about the progress on that. So it's going to be somewhere around Santa Fe or in that general vicinity is where it will connect to pure water, somewhere around that area. But there'll be a good discussion about where that particular project is at, which will ultimately be able to bring it.
Las Virgenes is really interested. So anyway, thanks. I'll be there on the 26th.
Oh, very good.
Thank you, Director Lefebvre. Rob Bestie.
Hey, just quickly, so on another kind of point in your analysis, I don't know if it's an environmental analysis or just more of an operational discussion is, so for instance, this year, the spreading basins were basically not available for 8 months. And granted, if you have pipelines that go farther east, you're okay, whatever. But even then, depends on where you would need water and such like that. But so is that part of it? And I don't know if it has to be part of an environmental analysis. It's just an operational type thing. I mean, for instance, we shut our down for 6 months and just didn't run it, you know, and which was fine because it didn't matter if we ran it or not. But kind of along those same lines, I think that that's kind of something to look at too. But part of it is just depends on where you put water.
Yeah. So Rob, that's a really great question. And so that is something that's in my purview as part of this is looking for alternative places that aren't owned by LA County. That we could actually. I'm sorry.
It was a good year.
It was a really good year. Sorry, my friend. But looking for opportunities where we could have a facility that was at least 90% of the time we could use it. Yep. Including that goes all the way from injection wells, purchasing property, all sorts of different options that we're looking at.
There's a abandoned pit, if you will, for sale, and we're looking with purchasing for the county. We just got to get our EIR done before we have money available.
We know all about purchasing abandoned wells.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm going to wrap it up too. I think I have one or two really minor questions, and one was regarding the subcommittee. I don't know who all is on the subcommittee, but is one of our directors on the subcommittee?
Director Alvarez.
Director Alvarez, I kind of assumed, but I didn't want to assume, so that's good to hear. And then secondly, obviously explained with particularly the Edison issue, which we had heard about before, being part of the delay, if you will, maybe of the timeline, but you did have in that bar chart that's still looking at 2030 for first water delivery, but yet completion is 2032. So what exactly does that distinction mean?
The current thinking, and it really isn't that much different than the early delivery. We just couldn't make 2028. And it wasn't only SCE, there were some other reasons. But the current effort is to bring some amount of the 115 MGD on earlier than 2032. So, and that would essentially be the first couple service connections. So LADWP to the Harbor Loop, to West Basin to tie into your system, possibly the Long Beach connection. So those three connections are in the first 12 to 14 miles, whatever reaches 1 and 2 are. So, it's still to be figured out how to do that. It probably means taking delivery of some of the trains early. The current plan is to look at doing progressive design build for the treatment plant and telling your design builder that that's what you want kind of fits in real well with letting them figure out the whole thing delivery like that. So.
Well, thank you for that clarification. I think this has been a really insightful presentation. Also, thank you for taking the drive to our office here, to this in person. We really appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is our director's comments or future agenda items. And I'll just ask if my colleagues have any future agenda items.
Mr. Chair,
Ray?
just want to say thank you to everyone for all the presentations today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you. Very informative, very good.
I just want to say the same thing. I thank you. We had 3 really good reports today. Thanks for everyone who's here, everyone who's online. Of course, a lot of this information will be on our website and it's still available to the public. And so also some great questions. So once again, thanks to everyone who made the trek over here and spent the whole time with us. With that, our next scheduled meeting is to be held on October 4th of 2023, and we are adjourned.